What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Morgan Thomas Show with my co-host, Big Al, Alan Adams. This is topic number 3, Al. This is our final segment of the night, and this is the Clemson versus Florida State preview and prediction. So start us off. What are some of your thoughts heading into this big game this weekend?
Segment 3, the preview, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so I think kind of the prevailing theme for this game is the inability for FSU's line to block anybody. Okay, they have not done that very well. I think they gave up a ton of sacks to NC State. So coming into Death Valley against a Brent Venables defense who love to blitz, as you like to call him, Blitz Venables at times, that doesn't appear to bode very well for them. Clemson should have done the same thing against UNC, and that didn't happen. So, maybe it's not as big a deal as we think it is. UNC had a really young offensive line. I think they had like 3 sophomores and 2 freshmen maybe, and we weren't able to get quite the pressure on that we were expecting. But, I think Brent Venables is really going to have a good plan for this week, and I think they're going to get to the quarterback early and often. Now, here's the question: who's the quarterback going to be? Is Blackman healthy? Is he going to be playing, and is he going to start, or are they going to go with Hornibrook? I think if Blackman is healthy, that he's the guy. Although I think Hornibrook is kind of less prone to mistakes than Blackman is, but Blackman has kind of a higher upside. I think you have to hit some big plays to beat Clemson. Like UNC did, and Hornibrook doesn't really have the arm strength to do that as much. Blackman's mobility and his arm strength kind of, gives him an element that Hornibrook doesn't have. They try to extend plays. He can make some bigger throws and that kind of thing. I think they're going to have to do that if they want any chance in this game. FSU star player, as we know, is running back Cam Akers. And that's despite the offensive line issues. We understand he's very explosive and capable of hitting those big plays. I think he's the key to the game for FSU. We've documented the issues with Clemson linebackers and their tackling this year. I have not been super impressed from what we have seen from those guys so far as their tackling is concerned. You miss one on Akers, and he very well could go the distance. But I think those are some of the things, at least on Florida State's side, as what we're looking for in this game. What do you have?
Well, I will tell you that I did some research right before this. I was out of town this week. Over in Charlotte, I noticed that a couple days ago, 24/7 Sports came out and said that Florida State had named Blackman the starter for the Clemson game. So that's it looks like as of October 7th. So put James Blackman in instead of Alex Hornibrook. I don't know if I'd really do that, to be honest. I mean, as a coach myself, just because you come back from injury, with the fact that the Florida State Seminoles have done well the past 2 games, and that Hornibrook really hasn't hurt them in any way. I mean, he's led them to victories. I don't know if I would just automatically put Blackman back in the game, but it does change up things. I mean, Blackman's not a terrible quarterback. He's got 970 yards passing, with 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions before he got injured. And so now that he's going to be back and playing this game, the thing about Blackman, though, is I think that is kind of why Hornibrook ended up winning the Louisville game, is because for whatever reason, Blackman starts out really strong. And he can get up 21-0 sometimes against some of his opponents. But then all of a sudden, it's like as the game goes on, he struggles and struggles and struggles. And the whole team, really, the whole offense, and it all kind of bases around that offensive line, as you were talking about. Man, against NC State, Al, it looks like they got sacked 8 times. And that's going to be pretty scary against Blitz Venables and the Clemson defense. That's one knock against them there. ESPN's football power index really right now has them as a 6.2% chance of winning, 93.8% chance for Clemson to win. If you look at it, both teams seem to have pretty powerful offenses, but the one that has the best defense, and defense wins championships, as they always say, the one that has the best defense is Clemson, keeping people at 12 points per game right now. Florida State's almost allowing 30 points per game. So Clemson, I think, is going to come out, and I think it's going to be back and forth for the first couple of quarters. I really do. I feel like it's one of those games where Clemson and Florida State are just going to score pretty high in the first half, and I don't really know how close it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a blowout at halftime. But then I think after halftime turns around, I think that's when Clemson starts to wear down that offensive line. Clemson's biggest problem against UNC is that UNC had 2 running backs that they could go to, Williams or Carter. They could kind of like rotate them out. And they had a very strong play action game going with that running game. And I think that's what really worked against Clemson, who runs a 3-3-5, if you're mainly relying on the passing game, the 3-3-5 falls right into Clemson's hands. They've got 5 guys out there that are guarding against the coverage and that are playing coverage. One of those being Isaiah Simmons, who can just do anything and everything every game. So I'll tell you, at the beginning of the week, I went on a podcast of Fett Greenville, and I talked to Gray Thompson. It was about a 2.5-hour podcast we did. It was crazy. But he talked to me about the Florida State game. And on Monday, before I knew about Blackman coming in, I felt like that Hornibrook would do enough to keep the game close. Think about it. The spread right now, Al, is 27 points.
Yep.
Whew. I mean, that is pretty high, man. I mean, Clemson has kind of been they're 5-0, right? And they've had 2 where they didn't beat the spread and 3 where they did beat the spread. So kind of average against the spread right now. My heart is saying just go pick Clemson, but that is 4 scores right there. 4 scores against Florida State. If you look at the history, you know how I told you I was going to start looking at the history. Clemson has won the last 4. But the only one that was a blowout really was that last year. I think it was like 59-10.
It was.
If you look at the other years, it was pretty close. I'm talking within 14, 16 points. With the fact that Florida State is kind of got a little bit of momentum, it makes me want to say that Florida State will be able to keep it within 27. Now, will Florida State win? No, I don't think Florida State's going to win at all. I don't think Cam Akers is going to be able to get anything going against Clemson. I think, just like you said, Clemson is going to be able to get to the quarterback. And, I mean, if NC State can sack him 8 times, I think Clemson can do the same, especially being, at Death Valley. I think that plays in the Clemson's favor as well. It's just really hard for me to say that they can beat them by 27. Mm-hmm. But then I start looking at other things. Like, for example, Janaris Robinson, their defensive end, their star defensive end, is not going to play the entire first half because of a targeting penalty against NC State. Mm-hmm. So you got to put that into account for sure. And another thing, too, is Florida State has they're going to give Clemson their best shot.
Yeah.
You know, as we said, Clemson is that top team. Florida State is not a team, even though they're not good. They're not a team that wants to go around and they still want to beat Clemson. They don't want to just give up every game. They're not tanking for any reason. And you know, I know my diehard Clemson fans are telling me, Morgan, go with your heart. Go with the 27 spread. I don't know if I can really do it. I really don't, because we have to see what Clemson can do after that Tar Heel game. They had a lot of struggles on the offensive line to the right-hand side of the ball, not getting any running game going there. And I really feel like Travis Etienne's got to figure that out, and the offensive line's got to figure that out. They also did a lot of streak plays, a lot of deep balls that just throwing it up 50-50. They got to figure that out. They got to change that up and do something differently. You know, Kelly Gramlich recently interviewed one of the players. I think it was it was Tremaine Akram, and she said, has Clemson pulled out the entire playbook? And he kind of gave her a smirk, and he said, I'm not at liberty to discuss that. And so, you know, basically everybody's opinion on, as far as fans and on Twitter and social media, has been that Clemson's just going with a base offense. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are saying, okay, after this scare, now Clemson's going to open up the playbook. You know, I don't know. I really don't. It's really hard for me to pick Clemson pick Clemson by more than 27. So, man, I just hate saying this in public, Al. I really do. But I'm going to pick Florida State plus the points on this one, just because it's a lot of points, man. 27 scares me in this case, but I will say that Clemson wins. Hopefully Clemson wins by 26, so then I feel good on both ends. They blow them out, but they don't blow them out enough.
And that's a fair point. I mean, goodness gracious, we just saw them go toe to toe, last week, or, not last Saturday, but 2 weeks ago, basically, against UNC. I mean, anything can happen. And Florida State, like you said, is playing better. Kendall Briles does a good job with the offense there, kind of making something out of nothing there, really. He's shown a lot of improvement there. They've got the new kind of helper for the defensive coordinator there, Levitt, as well. So, I mean, they're kind of getting things slightly turned around. Maybe they're not, where they want to be, but, they're getting closer, I think. I think also, though, Clemson, after all this talk, Dabo talked about he kind of is back on the Roy bus. Gave it an oil change or something like that. Took the cover off of the Roy bus, so that's awesome. I love anytime he can play the underdog card there, and every time he does, Tigers tend to make a statement. And this is kind of one of those games where I think that's going to happen. Philip gets in and says, I think Clemson coasts at home. Good coaches tend to turn wake-up calls into positives, which Dabo and the coordinators were doing. That's exactly what I was talking about. I think this was a wake-up call. I think they will open up the playbook a little more, at least in the beginning, assuming they need it. One of the things that kind of wanted to get your thoughts on was, with Cam Akers obviously being, one of the focal points of the offense and UNC kind of having some success in the run game, do you think Clemson might play a little more 4-3 this week as opposed to the three-man front?
Well, I could definitely see them switching it up. I got a bunch of questions really about the offensive line. I would say from the fans we got questions about the offensive line. I'll ask you that back.
Sure.
But as far as a defensive line, I mean, I'm not opposed to going to a 4-3. I feel like that. It's one of those things that he had to make the adjustment because of the unknowns on the defensive line.
Sure.
But I don't see why you couldn't have Tyler Davis, Pickney, and Williams out there all at the same time if they had to, or if you wanted to have Williams and Pickney out there, or Davis and Williams. I think you have enough to rotate and have four down, but they definitely are not the same size as last year and as what Clemson has been accustomed to as far as the interior. So maybe that's why they went to a 3-3-5.
Sure.
Maybe they even do something even different and come out with a 3-4, more of kind of like a pro style, maybe more of a Green Bay Packers style where you have four linebackers and keep those three linemen. Maybe throw out a Jake Venables there more, or a Mike Jones more in the field and fill up that box with more linebackers. That's maybe a thought for me. Here's something back to you, Al. People were asking me, should they just drop Sean Pollard? Is he, maybe he's not doing well at center. Maybe Gage Cervinka's not doing well at guard. I think they kind of, Falsinelli was in the center right last year, and then Pollard and Cervinka were guards last year on the right-hand side. Now they are having to be center and guard together. Do you think that there's an issue there with lack of experience with what they're doing? I mean, Pollard's obviously an all-conference type guy, and Cervinka's a pretty reliable guy too, but there definitely is something going on the right side of the offensive line.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, you mentioned about that a good bit last week, actually, when we were talking about the North Carolina game, and the right side got no push. There was no running to the right side. It was all on the left. And I agree with you that the problem is, if you take Pollard out, what's your line going to look like? A lot of people don't like Cade Stewart in there at right guard. There's a lot of kind of critics against him. So I don't know that that's a better option right now. As a matter of fact, I think Pollard has looked pretty good snapping the ball. Now, as far as, his blocking and everything like that, which is obviously, I get it, is a very important part of the game. But one of the things I was most worried about with Pollard was his snapping and the velocity and the accuracy of his snaps. And I think he's done a pretty good job with that this year across the board. So, I'm hoping it's just kind of little things here and there that they can kind of get fixed. I think one of the issues could possibly be that we rotate in so many guys. A young offensive line, I don't want to say young offensive line, obviously they're older players, but as far as this particular combination of players, hasn't been together all that long. And I think you have to develop that continuity on the line is incredibly important with an offensive line. So when we're kind of rotating parts and shifting players around and that kind of thing, it's hard to get comfortable. And I think that may be part of the issue. So hopefully we can get that fixed. I trust the coaches to get that done. Robbie Caldwell especially has done a great job over the past few years. So I have no doubt he'll kind of get that done. I really think they're going to have a good game this week because I think this is going to be a big game for Travis Etienne. I think he's kind of frustrated with his limited role in the past few games. People are clamoring for more touches from this guy, and I would agree. I think he's going to give you a huge effort this week, bust a couple of big runs, and kind of get back to that Travis Etienne form we all know and love. So I look for a big game from number 9 this weekend. I'm taking Clemson -27 versus FSU at home. My prediction, Clemson 48, FSU 17. The Tigers win a big one and make a statement.
I like everything you're saying. I still feel like that the offensive line adjustments that need to happen are going to be more difficult to do than just simply changing the play calling with the wide receiver routes that are being run. That's
Sure.
a pretty simple fix right there. Just run more slants, just run more towards the middle of the field. Stop throwing it deep all the time. I think that's some simple fixes there. You already have really, really talented wide receivers out there, so no need to kind of do any rotation. They already rotate all over the field. For me, again, it's the offensive line. What can they do? Can they step up and show that they can be dominant just like we were last year? Can they show that they can to play together as a group? That's going to be some of the things I want to see out of the Florida State game. And you got me excited about it. I hope you're excited about watching it. That's it for the show this week. We hope that you enjoyed watching and listening. Again, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and The Roar. This is the Morgan Thomas Show with my good friend, Big Al. It's our bedtime, Al. We are out of here. We hope you have a great weekend. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.